Next is about the non-vegetarian food, the mamsavargaha, the meat food. Now, अतः मांसवर्गान् उपदेश्यामः तद्यथा जलेशयाः आनूपाः ग्राम्याः क्रव्यभुजः एकशपाः जाङ्गलाश्चेति षण् मांसवर्गाः भवन्ति एतेषां वर्गाणाम् उत्तरोत्तराः प्रधानतमाः. Now, the mamsavarga, that non-vegetarian food source, is categorized into mainly six categories. Jaleshaya is water, the animals which are living in waters, water as such. Then Anupaha, those who are in the humid area, but just on the border of the water. That's what is mentioned by the Dalan also. Among the Jaleshayaha, that's among the water living animals. Again, there are two categories mentioned by Dalan. Koshastaha, Padinaha, Matsyascha. There are three varieties. Koshastaha, Padinaha, Matsyascha, which are present in some shell, and then those which have some foot-like presentations. Matsyaha, the fishes which do not have the legs or maybe the foot-like structures. Then Anupaha, Kulacharaha, Plavashta. Kulacharaha, that's amphibian animals, who are animals who live in both water as well as over the earth, as well as which can swim over the water. They are the Kulachara, Anupaha, the two categories. Then Gramya Shabdena, Gramya words are domesticated animals. And even Ekashapa also is Gramya according to Susura. Domesticated animals, animals which are living with the human beings, they are the ones. And then Ekashapa otherwise is the animals which have single hoof, like sheep, maybe goat, etc. Then Kravya carnivorous animals, animals which eat non-vegetarian food or which eat flesh, that's the Kravya Jangala, Jangala, the areas where the animals live in Jangala. In Kavya Bhukshabdena again there are two varieties, Guhashayaha, Prasahascha, those who live in caves and those who are freely moving. Then Jangala Shabdena, Jangahala, Bishkira, Pratuda, Parnamruga, Vileshayaha, iti Trayodosha Bhedaha, Shatsveva Antarbhutaha. There were again a discipline of classifying the source of food into 13 categories, and according to the Lana, there was 13 are within these six variety itself. Now, the one of the fundamental question is whether man is a herbivorous or a carnivorous, whether the man is a vegetarian or non-vegetarian, and what are the sources of the food. Now, based upon the physiology or biology of the world, the source of energy and the food source for all comes from the universe. See, for all animals, all the creations of the universe, the source of the food and source of the energy is from the universe itself. And within all that, the material world which we see now, the source of energy, primary energy of the source is sun. From sun, energy is converted into an energy which can be consumed by the living animals, is done by the plants. So plants have a major role in the chain of the food as such. And then the plant again is consumed by a primary consumer which we call as herbivorous animals. And then the herbivorous animals, they eat the herbivorous animals, and that's how the food is produced and food is consumed, and they are the secondary consumers. And there is what we call as a food web. There is a cycle of the food which moves from one source to the other, and there is a cycle like a herbivorous animal. When it dies, it decays, and that acts as a source of energy for the plants, and the same thing could be there. Now, of course, the basic question is whether the human being, man, is a herbivorous or whether the man is a carnivorous, and so on. This kind of a debate continues. Many people say that man, structure of the man is a vegetarian, and some say that structure of the man is for the non-vegetarian. But an unbiased discussion would be based upon the physiological appearance and physiological facts. Is a carnivore animal which lives on only the flesh, would be having a physiological structure like it has it has a claws on the foot and walks on four paws. It has paw-like structures, and then the mouth opening is quite large, whereas it also has sharp fangs, sharp blade teeth would be there. The dental structure of the dental of herbivores and carnivorous animals. Carnivorous animals will have a long teeth like, and herbivorous animals will have more of a incisor teeth like, and the lower jaw is embedded inside the top, so lower jaw is covered by the top as such. And the most important is the gastrointestinal tract of a carnivore animal are short. There is nothing like a large intestine and small intestine, and it doesn't require a fiber to stimulate the peristalsis. The peristalsis occurs without the fiber content, and intestines would be comparatively shorter, about 2.5 to 3 times the body length. Whereas in a herbivorous or vegetarian animal, the length of the intestines is about 20 times the length of the body. This is how the structures are different from a carnivore and herbivore. A animal which lives only on non-vegetarian food, animal which lives only on vegetarian source of the food. Then there are some more sub-varieties would be, and of course another is the digestion. Time taken for the digestion in a carnivore animal is quite short. Within 2 to 4 hours, the food is digested, whereas the digestion will be complete within, it takes about 24 to 48 hours in case of a herbivore animal. In between, you have the other variety, omnivore and fructivore. Now, the human, compared to this, the human structure has a very unique features. It has a prehensile hands. Moreover, it doesn't secrete uric acid. Human being doesn't secrete uric acid as such. The urine is alkaline urine in human beings, which is a characteristic of the herbivore animal like. Whereas in animals, these carnivore animals, the urine is acidic in nature, and basically there are multiple features, many features of a herbivore structure in case of the human being. A few of the structures resemble that of the carnivore animal also. So you may have a category, something different category of than what the biology would say in case of human being. It's neither omnivore and nor fructivore. Fructivore is those animals which live only on the fruits only. Now, it's a samabhakshaka. Human being is something who eats everyone, everything as such, maybe. And the digestion process in human beings, again, is not as long as that of a typical herbivore, but not as short as the carnivore animal. And the intestines are about 9 times longer than that of the body. So, about 3 times longer than a typical carnivore animal, but about half a time shorter than that of a typical herbivore animal. So, man is supposed to have this basic structure which necessitates processing of the food. Now, the primary difference between other animals and the human being is other animals they eat the food as it is available in the nature. Carnivore it eats the flesh as it is available in the nature. Herbivore it takes the food, vegetarian food as it is available in nature. But human being is supposed to have a process of preparing the food, cooking, or maybe adding something around it and preparing different recipes. That's the typical nature of the human being. But if at all it's a question of food to be taken as such, as it is available in the nature, human structure is more favorable for a vegetarian food, herbivore food, than the non-vegetarian. If there is a need for non-vegetarian consumption, it needs to be processed. So that's how we have to consider. Now, you may have a separate category about the source of the nature of the food habits of the human being. Human being is having a structure which is favorable for vegetarian food, but if it has to be a omnivore consuming the non-vegetarian food, it needs processing. That could be the conclusion in the debating point. Now that's one aspect. Another aspect of this food cycle is there is always a in the normal ecological conditions there is always a linkage between one to the other. See in the nature you have so many species and primarily the aim of these primary different species is one would act as a source of the food for the other and there is always an interrelationship. A plant is eaten by an animal, one animal is eaten by another animal, so you'll have smaller animals eating bigger animals and so on. and human being also has to have a role at that level. But what we now see is a human being is commanding, and he tends to have a maybe authentic or maybe a superlative sort of control over all the other sources of animals, which is not really ecologically wrong. Ecologically, it should be the other way. Anyway, we cannot change the situation. We will have to be abide by the situation. Now, the other part, like whether that non-vegetarian food is Vedic or accepted or not. In Veda also, you have the description of the animals being used as the food. यः पौरुषेयेण क्रविशां समन्विते ये अश्वेन पशूनां यातुधानः यो अन्ध्यायाः भरति क्षीरम् अग्ने तेषां शीर्षाणि हरसापि वृश्च यो पौरुषेयेण क्रविशा समन्ते यो अश्वेन पशुना यातुधानः यो अध्यायाः भरति क्षीरम् अग्रे देशां शीर्षाणि हरसापि वृक्ष. Now there is a typical description of the sacrificing the animal in the Rig Veda, and the Rig Veda it describes about how the horses have to be cut and how the milk of the cow can be taken. So what the primarily the milk of the animals is considered to be the major source, a favorable source. Then the other would be, the next part would be cut off the heads of the animals and then process it under flame. That's it needs to be cooked. Now, more restrictions and more descriptions about how to eat the non-vegetarian food is described in Manusmriti. So generally, Manusmriti is considered, people say Manusmriti is having a lot of restrictions and so on. But the Manusmriti has a very broad-minded approach to the source of the food as living. The typical primary final statement of Manusmriti is न मांसभक्षणे दोषः न मध्ये न च मैथुने प्रवृत्ति एषा भूतानां निवर्तिस्तु महाफला. The a tendency to have mamsabhakshana, non-vegetarian food, or alcohol, or maybe the sexual indulgence, these are the natural instincts, and there is nothing wrong in it. But if you control them, if you regulate them, have a control, and then get away from them, then you will have more benefits. This is what Manusmriti says finally. Now, if at all you have to sacrifice an animal, the rule is न अकृत्वा प्राणिनां हिंसं मांसम् उत्पद्यते क्वचित् न च प्राणिवधः स्वर्ग्यः तस्मात् मांसं विवर्जयेत् समुत्पत्तिं च मांसस्य वधबन्धौ च देहिनां रसमीक्ष निवर्तेत सर्वमांसस्य भक्षणात् न भक्षयति यो मांसं विधिं हित्वा पिशाचवत् न लोके प्रियतां याति व्याधिश्च न पीड्यते. Now, whenever you eat a non-vegetarian food, the meat as such, it's important to know how that food is derived from. You should not hurt the animal. Not akrutva praninam himsam mamsam utpadyate kvachit. Mamsa cannot be produced without hurting the animals, and hence pranivadaha nasvargyaha should not be done. You should not kill a animal which has a proper life still, or which is active and has a proper life. But if the animal is at the end of life, then it can be sacrificed. It can be sacrificed without producing much pain to the animal. Anumanta, Vishasita, Nihanta, Kray Vikray, Samskarta, Upaharta, Khatakashteti Ghatakaha. The those who permit the killing of animals, or those who do that activity, or those who sell those, or Samskata who processes such food, they are considered to be Ghatakaha. They are considered to be sinners. And स्वमांसं परमांसेन यो वर्धयितुमिच्छति अनभ्यर्च्य पितॄन् देवान् स्व अन्ये नास्ति अपुण्यकृत. You are trying to enhance your flesh by eating the flesh of somebody else, and hence that's not a really good option. So, to conclude, Manusmriti doesn't deny the role of non-vegetarian food. Non-vegetarian food is allowed, but the source of the food, how it is prepared, these have to be considered, and it should be regulated, it should be controlled. That's the one aspect. Now, then another aspect, now at present, non-vegetarian food is one major source of the food for the whole world, and now because the human being is now controlling over the other animals, the source of the food would be always from the domesticated animals. See, there is always a practice now of domesticating and cultivating the animals, and animal husbandry has been in the Department of the Agriculture, as if the animals are cultivated as if we are cultivating the plants. That's how the approach is. But there is a basic difference between the quality of the food source between any sort of animal when it's the wild area and the domesticated when the animal is domesticated as such. Now you have the different sources, the different poultries, pork. These are the sources. The difference between the calorie consumption and calorie source of the meat originating from a wild animal compared to a domesticated animal of the same species, there is a lot of difference. The caloric value of animals which are domesticated, they would be always slightly higher than the calorie value of wild animals, and it can, in general, the nutrition contents, the nourishment contents like minerals and vitamins, they are comparatively lesser in case of the domesticated animals than the wild. Now, that's to highlight the importance of assessing the source of the food when you consume the non-vegetarian food, which practically is not possible. See, practically, these things are not possible. When you go to a hotel and take the food, you cannot make out the source of the food. But from the other way, from the theory point of view, it's quite important that the source of the food makes a huge difference when it comes to the question of non-vegetarian food. Now, anyway, that's about the general issue. Now, we can come back to the संहिता ये ते पुनर्विधाः जाङ्गलाः अनुपश्यति तत्र जाङ्गलवर्गो अष्टविधः तद्यथा जङ्घालाः विष्किलाः प्रतुदाः गुहाशयाः प्रसहाः पर्णमृगाः बिलेशयाः ग्राम्याश्चेति तेषां जङ्घालविष्किलो प्रधानतमो. Now, Jangala animals, again they are categorized into the Ashtavidha, 8 types, and their names are same. Now, Mundi Chetyadaha Jangarathamyakaha, Dalana gives you more description about these animals. The animals which have a prominent head area is prominent, they are considered as Jangalaha. And Bikirya Bhakshantyete Tasma Vishkiraha, the animals which spread out their food and then eat the food, they are considered as Vishkiraha, something like the birds. Then Balatkarena Bhakshata Pakshi is the Pratudaha. Pratudaha are those which pull up or squeeze the food, fibrous food, like maybe as in case of an eagle which pulls the fresh assets. That kind of the animal is considered as pratudaha. Guhashayaha, quite obviously, those who live in caves. Prasahaha, which prasashya bhakshante prasahaha, which catch the source of the food and then keep these drag them to a extent. That is considered as a prasahaha. Parnachara mrugaha pashu. Parna mrugaha is those who eat on leaves only, leaves and grass. Bilashayaha, again, Guha and Bila, the difference is only that much. Guha is big cave, Bila is a small cave, something like your mongoose, etc. Gramya, domesticated animals. These are the different types of the Jangala animals. Now, Tau, Yena, Harina, Riksha, Kuranga, Karala, Kritamala, Sharabha, Shodamstra, Prushaka, Charush, Arushkara, Mruga, Matrika, Prabhutaya, Janghalaha, Mrugaha. Now, these are the animals which are considered as Janghalaha. Again, to identify the exact species of these based upon this description in the Sanskrit text is quite difficult. In general, these are wild animals, and something like the deers. Harina is the deer, and the rickshaw is the bear. So many of the wild animals were being used in those days as a source of the food. But it's not that they were eaten without assessing them. Their qualities were assessed and their physiological impact also was very well known. That's why the Jankhala Mrugaha, in general, Kashayaha, Madhuraha, Laghavaha, Vatapittaharaha, Tishnaha, Tadyaha, Bastisosanashta. these animals would be having kashaya madhura rasa lagu guna and vatapittah तीक्ष्ण also पस्यशोधनः कषाय मधुरो हृद्यः पित्तासु कफरोगः संग्राही रोचनो बध्यः तेषां येणो ज्वरापहः येण that's the deer one species of the deer is a kashaya madhura and sangrahi rochana and ज्वरापहः मधुरो मधुरपाके दोषज्ञो अनलदीपनः शीतलो भद्रपिन्मूत्रः सुगन्धी हरिणो लघुः हरिण is another species of the deers which would have madhura rasa and doshagna and shitalah bhaddapinmutrah. Now about this species you get the literature but to identify them in the current situation is quite difficult. The description of them would be Mrigah, Kurangah, Vatai, Krishnasarah, Sulochana, Harino, Ajinayonihi, Syad, Yedah, Prishata, Ityapi. Now, my purpose of quoting this would be to show like these use of these animals as a source of food was quite popular and different synonyms and their descriptions are available in the text. Only the problem would be to make out them in the present situation and identify them in the present situation would be quite difficult. So those who are interested in that area of research, you have the material and lots of information is available about their features, their descriptions. The only thing is there need to be identified with the current situation and maybe identify the species, which is a quite elaborate job, which I don't have much of the that potential. Maybe somebody can do that. Then the next is a कषाय मधुरो हृद्यः पितासु कफरोगः संग्राही लोचनः बलः तेषां येणो ज्वरापः that's of course it's a repetition then येणः कृष्णः कृष्णः तैवोज्ञेयः हरिणः ताम्र उच्यते यो न कृष्णो न ताम्रश्च कुरङ्गः सो अभिधीयते so येण हरिण kuranga these are all the same species variety it's a येण are black in color and harina are reddish in color and your Nakrishna Tamra, which has neither black nor reddish, they are called as Kuranga. Now, Shita's Pittashamani, Vidnaya, Mrigamatrika, Sanipata Kshaya, Shwasa, Kasa, Hikka, Aruchi Pranoto. Mrigamatrika is again another variety of the animal, again, exact identification not known. It has a Asakpita Shamani, Sanipata Kshaya, Shwasa. All that important is now whether these are absolutely relevant in the present day situation. Again, big question mark because whether we use those wild animals now as a source of the food or not, these are all the question marks where we do not have a definite answer. So it may be considered as now only theoretical issue, but still, what we have to appreciate is a it's not that the food is consumed without assessing the physiological property and physiological property of each and every animal and to the extent, maximum extent of detail where the habitat of the animal, the color of the skin of the animal, specific species of the animal, every aspect is assessed. That's all the point which you need to highlight. Then again, hence we will be just bit faster in this. We will not go much of the time, right? Lava Titiri, Kapinjala, Vartika, Avartaka, Nabtrika, Vartika, Chakora, Kalavinka, Mayura, Krakara, Upachakra, Kukuta, which is now popular is chicken, Saranga, Shataputra, Tittirika, Kuruvahaka, Yabalaka, Prabhutaya, Triahalaha, Vishkiraha, these are the different birds. And in general, the flesh of the birds would be Laghavaha, Shita Madhuraha, Kashayaha, Doshanashanaha. Sangrahi Deepanashchiva Kashaya Madhuro Laghu, Lavaha, Katuvipakashcha Sanipatetu Pujitaha. Lava bird is Sangrahi, Deepana, and Kashaya Madhura and Katuvipaka. ईषद् गुरुष्णमधुरः वृष्यः मेधाग्निवर्धनः चित्तिरिः सर्वदोषज्ञः ग्राही वर्णप्रसादनः रक्तपित्तः शीतो लघुश्चापि कपिञ्जलः कफोत्थेषु च लोकेषु मन्दवाते च शस्यते हिक्का श्वास अनिलः विशेषः गौरतित्तिरिः tittiri the properties of the tittiri properties of the kapinjala again which is tittiri which is kapinjala arguable where we may not be able to pinpoint exactly but their properties were studied. Then वाचपितः हृष्याः मेधाग्नि बलवर्धनाः लघव क्रकराः हृद्याः तथा च उपचक्रकाः क्रकर and उपचक्रका they are वाचपितः and so on. Then कषायः स्वादुलवणः त्वच्यः केशो अरुचौहितः मयूरः स्वरमेधाग्नि दृक् श्रोत्र इन्द्रिय दार्ढ्यकृत मयूर peacock national bird, and if at all you use that national bird as a food now, it's culpable. You will be punished. स्निग्ध उष्ण अनिलः हृष्यः स्वेदज्वरबलापहः ब्रह्मणः कुक्कुटो वन्यः तद् ग्राम्यो गुरुस्तु सः वातरोगक्षय वमी विषमज्वरनाशनः kukkuta, the wild grown sort of the chicken, would be stigdha ushna anilaha vrishyaha sweda swara balabhaha, it increases the sweda and swara, and brahmana. And gramya, the cultivated one, domesticated, this chicken, would be Guru, Vatarovikshaya Vami Vishamajvara Nashana. These are the properties. Now, we may not be able to apply the same properties for the present day generation of these sources of the food, because when they are cultivated in a farm as such, the food habits, the mode of nourishment, they are different and their properties may not be the same. Then the other birds are Kapota, Paravata, Bhringaraja, Parabhrata, ಪರಭೃತಕ ಯಷ್ಟಿಕ ಕುಲಿಂಗ ಗೃಹಕುಲಿಂಗ ಗೋಕ್ಷ್ವೇಡಕ ಡಿಂಡಿಮ ಮಾಣವಕ ಶತಪತ್ರಕ ಮಾತೃನಿಂದಕ ಶಿಶುಕ ಭೇದಾಶಿಶುಕ ಸಾರಿಕ ಅವಲ್ಗಿ ಗಿರಿ ಶಾಲೂಟ ಶಾಲಟು ವಾಲಟು ತೂಷಕ ಸುಗ್ರಹ ಖಂಜರಿ ಹಾರೀತ दात्युः प्रभृतयः प्रतुदाः. Then pratuda, another variety of the birds. These are also the birds, but they are the birds of different sort of the birds, and they are kashaya madhurah rukshah palaharah marutkarah. These birds, they live on only the fruits of the plants, and they are pitashleshmarah shitaah baddhamutra alpavarchasah sarvadoshakaras tesham bhedashi maladushaka. Bhedashi type of the bird is sarvadoshakara. Kashaya swadravano guruhu kanakapotakaha. Kanakapotaka is another of the bird. Again, the issue is we are not able to make out. Paravata, of course, is the same which we see now as the pigeons. रक्तपित्त प्रशमनः कषाय विशदो अपि विपाके मधुरश्चापि गुरुः पारावतः स्मृतः. The pigeons flesh meat is of that sort. कुलिङ्गः मधुरः स्निग्धः कफशुक्रविवर्धनः रक्तपित्तहरः. Veshma Kulingastu Atishukra. Kulinga, again, there are two varieties, domesticated and wild. The domesticated will be Atishukrala and Raktapittahara. Then Simha Vyadara Ruka Tarakshu Ruksha Deepi Marjara Shtugala Mega Mruga Ervarka Prabhusaya Guhashaya. Guhashaya animals which live in big caves are Simha Vyadra, etc. Now, in those days, they even had eaten the flesh of lion, tiger, etc. also. Whether that kind of habit exists now, or is it practicable, is it legal? These are all the other questions like which we will not go into that. मधुराः गुरवः स्निग्धाः बल्याः मार्तनाशनाः उष्णवीर्याः हिता नित्यं नेत्र गुह्य विकारिणां. They are suitable for गुह्य विकार नेत्र विकार. Today, because of some commitment, I will try to end today now a bit early. We will continue in the next session. I have some other commitment, sorry. So we will conclude today.